The Seven Years' War was a major European conflict between France and Great Britain in the North American colonies. It was known as the French and Indian War because both sides allied themselves with different Native American groups. Britain and its allies won the war, however, peace did not last long. The colonists who rebelled against British rule were called patriots. They were made up of a wide variety of social groups. Some were college students, others were farmers. Loyalists were colonists who stayed loyal to Britain. They were also called Tories. They wanted Britain to continue ruling the colonies. The French and Indian War left Britain greatly in debt. King George III raised money to pay back Britain's war debt by taxing the colonists. However, the colonists didn't have representatives in Britain's government. Some of the taxes that were given were the Sugar Act, which was a tax on sugar and molasses imported from the West Indies, the Stamp Act, a tax on newspapers, legal documents, and licenses. Georgians disapproved of all of these taxes. Georgians who came together to oppose the Stamp Act were called the Liberty Boys. They were part of a larger group, the Sons of Liberty. Some called them Liberty Brawlers. They met in taverns such as Savannah's Tondy's Tavern. Georgia was the only colony to actually sell the stamps, and the Stamp Act was eventually repealed. Noble Wimberly Jones, Speaker of the Georgia Colonial Assembly, led the Townshend Act protests. The Townshend Acts placed imported taxes on tea, paper, glass, and coloring paints. Governor Wright disbanded the assembly and tried to end the protests. The Continental Congress met in Philadelphia in September 1774 to protest the Intolerable Acts levied against the Massachusetts colonists. Although Georgia was not represented, all colonies were urged to establish a committees of safety. They agreed to stop all trade with Britain. This meeting was carried on in secret. A provincial congress was held in Savannah in January 1775, and less than one-half of Georgia's parishes were represented. The Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia after the Lexington and Concord battles. The Second Continental Congress drafted a petition for King George III asking for the end of the unfriendly steps against the colonies. King George III refused to accept the petition. An authorized Continental Army was organized. Georgia's Lyman Hall arrived at the Continental Congress in May 1775. Georgia's Provincial Congress was held at Tondy's Tavern in Savannah in July 1775. Archibald Bullock, John Houston, Noble Wimberly Jones, and the Reverend John Zubley were chosen to represent Georgia at the Second Continental Congress, along with Lyman Hall in Philadelphia. The delegates were given no specific instructions and told them to make the best decisions for Georgians. Governor Wright fled the colony in early 1776. Soon a Council of Safety established rules and regulations to govern Georgia. Thomas Paine's Common Sense pamphlet encouraged colonies to break from Great Britain. It sold more than 500,000 copies. Other pamphlets, including The Crisis, influenced opinion. On August 2, 1776, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, and George Walton signed the Declaration of Independence. The declaration meant that the colonists were one nation, and Georgians prepared for war. About one-third of Georgians remained loyal to Great Britain. They were called Tories. The Whigs influenced a state constitution allowing separation of powers and giving citizens rights to agree how they were governed. In May 1777, a constitution adopted at the Constitutional Convention in Savannah. 8 counties formed. They were Burke County, Camden, Chatham, Effingham, Glenn, Richmond, Wilkes, and Liberty. According to the 1777 Georgia Constitution, the governor's power would be limited. An executive council of 12 legislatures held the greatest power. The council could overrule the governor's decisions. John Tuchelin was appointed Georgia's first governor. Georgia's 1777 Constitution changed in 1789. The first Constitution of the United States of America was the Articles of Confederation. It was ratified or approved on July 4, 1776, and went into effect in January 1781, when ratified by Maryland and Virginia. Amidst all of this, the Revolutionary War carried on, including fighting in Georgia. Savannah was captured and looted by the British troops in December 1778. Lootings, murders, and burnings occurred. Sunbury Port was captured in early 1779. Augusta was also attacked. The Georgia militia was not effective against the well-trained British troops. Governor Wright eventually returned from Great Britain to govern Georgia. One significant battle was the Battle of Kettle Creek in 1779. Colonel Elijah Clark led the Georgia militia and defeated about 800 British troops near Washington, Georgia. It was a great victory for morale of the militia and Georgians who were seeking independence. One badly needed weapons and horses from the British. Another significant event was the Siege of Savannah in 1779. About 15,000 Americans and 4,000 French laid siege to Savannah. The attack happened on October 9th and resulted in 1,000 American and French deaths in less than an hour. Only 40 British troops died, including Polish Count Casimir Pulaski was killed. Savannah remained under British control for nearly 4 more years, and guerrilla warfare continued in the Georgia back country. Two of Georgia's wartime heroes are Nancy Hart and Austin Dabney. Nancy Hart single-handedly captured a group of British loyalists who bragged of murdering an American colonel. Hart County is the only county in Georgia named for a woman. Austin Dabney fought with distinction and was wounded at Kettle Creek. He also saved Elijah Clark's life during this battle. As the Revolutionary War came to an end, Elijah Clark, the Georgia militia, and the Continental Army regained Augusta from the British in June of 1781. 11 more battles or skirmishes were fought in Georgia during this war. George Washington, with French help, forced the British to surrender at Yorktown, Virginia, in October 1781. The British left Savannah in the spring of 1782, and the Treaty of Paris in September 1783 ended the war. The treaty was signed by the United States, Britain, and France.